the man who never got lost until this night. This is a true story, told by the man himself many years later. He never asked for attention. He never tried to make money from it, and he never tried to convince anyone. He only told it because he could no longer carry it alone. When Anders was 52 years old, he had spent most of his life in the Swedish wilderness. He wasn't an adventurer on YouTube, not an influencer, not even particularly spiritual. He was a hunter, a forestry worker, the kind of man who could read the ground the way others read text, who knew how moss leaned on stones, how wind moved through marshland, and how silence in the forest is supposed to sound. He grew up in northern Dalarna, where the forest isn't something you visit, it's something you live inside. His father taught him one simple rule when he was a child. The forest is not dangerous, but it does not forgive stupidity. And Anders had lived by that rule his entire life. He always carried a map, always a compass, always extra food, and he never walked farther than he knew exactly where he was. That's why what happened in the fall of 2009 should not have been possible. It was late September. The air was clear. The ground was dry. No sign of snow yet. Anders had planned a solo trip. Nothing unusual. He had done it hundreds of times. The plan was simple. Enter from an old forest road, follow a ridgeline, set up camp near a small lake, and return the next day. He left his car shortly after noon. Everything was normal. Birds, wind in the trees, the sound of his boots against blueberry bushes. After 3 hours, he stopped to check his position, out of habit, not uncertainty. The compass matched. The map markings matched. Everything was exactly as it should be. But about 20 minutes later, something happened that he could not explain. It started with the silence. Not normal silence. Not no birds right now, but the kind of silence that feels heavy, as if sound itself is being pulled away. Anders stopped walking. He remembers thinking that his own movements sounded too loud, as if the forest around him was no longer responding. He checked his watch. Only a few minutes had passed, yet the air felt different. He pulled out his compass again. The needle twitched, not spinning, but making small, nervous jumps. He had never seen that before. He let out a short laugh, said out loud, "Get a grip," and kept walking. That's when he reached the clearing. A perfectly circular clearing, free of bushes. The ground flat, covered in short grass, not moss. And that was wrong, because according to the map, it wasn't there. Anders slowly walked around the edge. The trees surrounding the clearing were older than they should have been. The trunks thick, the bark dark. And even though there had been wind earlier, not a single branch moved here. He felt something then. An impulse he had learned to trust over a lifetime. Not fear, but warning. He decided to leave the area. That's when he realized he didn't know which direction he had come from. Anders did exactly what he had always done. He stopped, breathed, pulled out his map and compass. But nothing made sense anymore. The compass pointed differently every time he held it still. The terrain around him no longer matched the map. The ridgeline was gone. He walked straight ahead for 10 minutes and ended up back at the clearing. He increased his pace and came back again. And every time, the clearing felt more wrong. The air was colder there. Sound felt muted. And then he noticed something else. Marks, not footprints, but flattened grass. As if something large had stood there, around the edge, waiting. As dusk fell, he heard it. A sound far away. Not an animal he recognized. Not a wolf. Not an elk. It sounded human, but wrong. as if someone was trying to call out without knowing how. The sound came closer, and every time it happened, the forest answered with silence. Anders felt something old wake up inside him, that instinct that doesn't care about explanations. He turned on his headlamp. The light didn't reach far. It felt like the darkness around him was swallowing it. He never set up camp. He didn't dare. Instead, he stood with his back against a tree, awake all night, and he heard them. Footsteps moving around the clearing, not heavy, not fast, as if something was walking and learning. At one point, he saw something move just outside the edge of the light. Too tall, too thin. He didn't close his eyes. He knew that if he did, he wouldn't open them again. He heard his name whispered from the forest. It didn't sound human. It felt more like some entity trying, desperately, to mimic a human voice. He froze in terror, barely daring to breathe. Then his name was called again, but this time from another direction. He couldn't quite tell where it was coming from. Was he truly hearing it? Or was it just his imagination beginning to betray him? When dawn finally came, the clearing was gone. He was suddenly standing in dense forest. Birds were singing. The wind moved the branches. The compass worked again. He found his way back in less than an hour. When he reached his car, he saw that only one night had passed, but Anders says to this day that it felt much longer. He went back, twice, with other people. The clearing was never there. None of them heard anything, felt anything. But Anders, he stopped walking alone in the forest after that. And to this day, when he tells the story, he always ends with the same words. The forest is not dangerous, but sometimes it looks back.